Welcome to Adventure Thinking, an intimate series of live video podcasts that explores the mindset born from challenge, adversity, and living a life of no regrets. I'm Jonesy, your host, and for the past 20 years, I have been lucky to have embarked on some crazy expeditions and returned transformed with some pretty epic tales to share. Each week, I'll be bringing adventure stories and mindsets down from the proverbial mountaintop as we dive into the hearts and minds of some of the world's greatest adventurers. These are people that have achieved truly phenomenal undertakings against all odds and have returned better for it. So, do you want to live more adventurously? This is Adventure Thinking.
All right, so episode 8, Lauren. We are on episode 8 of Adventure Thinking. What?
I can't believe it's episode 8 already.
I know, it's crazy.
Awesome.
But so any massive changes or learnings this week? What's been going on for us?
I would say the thing that we've been facing is more life this week. We started.
Wait, you mean those kids, those little succubus that are sucking our energy?
No, I think it's the realities and harshness of life. For instance, we had some expectations and we were hoping something would happen and it didn't, and it was a pretty big disappointment. We've had some bad news on the health front with some really good friends. It's just been a hard week, and so when we started this podcast, I think we did it to bring people together and help other people. But this week I have to say, I need it. I need a little resilience. And so I'm so excited to chat with the guests that we have coming up.
Jeff Wilson. Yeah, well, it's perfect timing for us and for you and
so
and the whole
excited.
world.
I need it.
Okay, well, so Jeff is a very, very interesting chap, and I want to dive into his background.
Just a couple
of
world records.
I've got world record envy, I think, with him. So Jeff, beyond being he's a world-class polar explorer, he's a desert fanatic, he's an all-round just awesome bloke, an entrepreneur, and he's kind of meshed his life together, sort of like living in the sort of, I suppose, the expeditionist side, working as a veterinary surgeon, and being a family man as well. So he's got this nice little combination, and I think out of most people, he's doing the balance bloody well. And part
Which
of
isn't easy.
No,
we struggle with it all the time.
We have 2 kids and we're struggling with it. I think Jeff's got 3. They're a little bit older, and I think they can start adventuring with him. But I just want to run through quickly some of his world records. So, like I said, 7. Longest supported.
This takes a minute.
This is going to take a minute. Longest solo unsupported polar journey in human history. The first solo unsupported summit of Dome Argus in Antarctica. The first Australian to reach the pole of inaccessibility, solo and unsupported. The fastest solo unsupported crossing of Antarctica. The fastest unsupported crossing of Greenland, south to north. The first to cross Torres Strait by kiteboard. And the first and only wind-assisted crossing of the Sahara Desert. I am tired. We're done on the show. We don't need to get Jeff in.
You're jealous.
I am jealous. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to crack in to this conversation with Jeff. Before we do, we're going to watch a little clip, I suppose, of Jeff's most recent media exploits, I guess.
Polar explorer Jeff Wilson.
Jeff Wilson.
Jeff Wilson.
Jeff Wilson.
Jeff Wilson.
Stico viaggio di Jeff Wilson.
Is off to Antarctica in an attempt to make history with an epic solo trek.
Jeff the Vet, as he's affectionately known, is in preparation for another incredible journey.
I've been pushing for this journey
for over 6 years, and it's an attempt to break the record for the longest solo polar journey in human history.
This form of training is just a taste of what Jeff will experience. In here, it's minus 15 degrees, but in Antarctica, it could drop to minus 50.
This one is purely exploration. There's 880 kilometres of ice there that no human being set foot on. And that to me is exciting, but it also brings a whole lot of unknown. You really are alone. At the top of Dome Argus, there'll be no one on the planet more isolated than me at that point in time. So there's mental challenges as well, but I feel up to it. I feel the gear's up to it. My training's been arduous. I'm ready to go.
Hurtling across a desolate wasteland with just the wind for power and his own thoughts for company. His first goal is the appropriately named Pole of Inaccessibility, the furthest point from the coastline.
That's the cold of inaccessibility.
9 p.m. yesterday, I arrived. Quite shocked, actually, because it's just been brutally cold.
Jeff Wilson has spent 39 days alone in Antarctica. He's travelled more than 2,000 kilometres using kite skiing. Dr. Wilson says it's been a tough journey.
The journey was much more difficult than I envisaged. The temperatures, the damage.
Jeff has solo travelled across Antarctica for thousands of kilometres. It's the longest unsupported trip anywhere in Antarctica, so that means he's had no flying of supplies. He's purely been on his own. The psychological pressure that man's been under has been amazing.
Dancing at the end of the earth to celebrate a world first.
Overnight, the Currumbin vet became the first person to summit Dome Argus unassisted.
Jeff Wilson has battled weather, fatigue and loneliness to complete the remarkable journey.
At long last, after 37 days last night, I made it to Kunlun Station, which is the very, very top, bar 2 metres, of Dome Argus.
Becoming the first person to ever make it to Dome Argus on foot.
Well, against all odds, made it today.
It's the highest point on the Antarctic plateau and also the coldest naturally occurring place on the planet. Enjoying some cold, lonely rest before turning for home. He's got 2,400 kilometres more to return to base and the end of a trip that's helping raise money for breast cancer awareness.
Imagine travelling at more than 5,000 kilometres in the bitter cold of Antarctica and you're all alone.
Okay, a polar explorer has set a record. His name is Jeff Wilson.
For 58 days, he's used a kite and skis to make his way across Antarctica and into history.
Incredibly, against all the odds, he's done it.
Completing the longest solo, unsupported journey in a polar region.
This is an absolute world-class achievement. This will resonate for a long, long time.
5,306 kilometres. His link with the sled snapped while avoiding a crevasse, but this close to the goal, he refused to slow down, and then it was over.
And just like that, I'm back at Novo.
Now, Currumbin vet Jeff Wilson is on the final leg home.
The adventurer was given a hero's reception after conquering a seemingly impossible challenge.
From the loneliest man in the world to the most loved.
We solo for that long and then to come to this is quite a mind blow for the senses.
Many thought he'd never make it, but Jeff refused to give up.
Jeff, welcome to the show, mate.
Hi, Jeff.
That's crazy highlight reel. How are you, mate? How are you?
Oh, good. Yeah, it's funny seeing that airport reunion. Quite emotional. I don't think I've seen that tape before. So, yeah, it certainly brings back a lot of emotion. That was a tough journey. I don't think anyone expected it to be easy, but probably not quite as tough as we expected.
Now, you were expecting to be out there for a lot longer, though, weren't you? I mean, you had supplies up to 80, 90 days on that trip, because I was following it. I'm hyper fascinated with Antarctica and with yourself, Jeff. Your sleds were
yeah, definitely. I had 90 days, and the funny thing is, if I'd taken as long as we'd intended, I would probably still be down there overwintering, because they shut Antarctica very quickly, and it would have put me into a February departure date, which probably would have meant I would have missed the last flight out. So we were very fortunate, and there were reasons why I turned for home earlier based around fuel bottles breaking, and that was pretty heartbreaking. But at the time, and this is tying us into this resilience discussion, we never know, when we're in a low point, what it's setting us up for. And if I hadn't turned for home when I did, I don't know that I would have made it home.
Yeah. Okay. So it was a good thing to happen at the time. It was heartbreaking, but yeah. Now, in hindsight, it's easy to say that was the right decision, but at the time, you probably would have been biting yourself a little bit.
Oh yeah, just do these mistakes. Just trusting gear that's worked before, and the root of the issue there was I put
always put my fuel bottles in that, that expanding foam that you use to fill cracks in the roof. I'll lay them in the bottom of the sled, and then something I developed for my last journey, spray it all, and then I trim it down to fit. But I'd never operated in as temperatures as low as I had on this one, and air temp of close to -50 and wind chill of close to -90. Just nothing worked and everything broke. So the fuel bottles started to migrate around the sled and bang into each other, and 3 fuel bottles later, I had to make a route change.
Jeez, that's just insane.
Just for the people that don't, because some people listening are not your typical adventurers, I think. Can you just explain for those that don't understand Antarctica, because I didn't understand this before I met Justin. There's a season down there. There is, a point of time that humans can survive, and then it closes because it's dark and cold and there's no flights in or flights out. So if you're in, you have to stay in. Can you explain that just for people that don't understand kind of these critical windows within Antarctica, considering that's kind of an element of how you plan these things and a limitation, I guess, as well?
Yeah, I mean, if you imagine Antarctica as a dinner plate turned upside down, you've got this rim of mountains that hold the ice and snow on the high altitude plateau, and then it runs through like pavlova through the cracks between the mountains to the coast. So the coast can be quite comfortable, all the way through their winter. But once you're on the plateau, no human's going to survive that plateau outside probably late October through to February. So most of the bases start in early, which is their summer period. For me, because we were trying to cross the highest point of the plateau, which is the coldest naturally occurring place on planet Earth. It's cold. You're very short of breath, even though it's only 14,000 feet. Because it's at the pole, it's much thinner air than at the same height at the equator. So you're feeling panicky already. If you're caught, in a -90 degrees Celsius event there, you're not going to survive. So we were aware that even in summer, I could get caught by a low temperature cell there and die in the middle of summer up there. So it was a real high risk maneuver getting up and over this feature, but the timing was critical, and I just got very fortunate and got blown over the top by a warm weather system that saw the temperatures not get below -45. But, I remember being terrified at -45. It felt like you had some fat guy sitting on your chest all night, and you're fighting panic. I ended up taking 2 Valium to get me through a bit of a panic attack, because the more panicked you got, the more your oxygen debt was palpable, and then you get in this vicious cycle of stress, and you're starting to put yourself into a real crisis. And if you had a 6-pack, you'd probably quickly drink a few beers and calm down, but 10 milligram of Valium and things don't seem so bad, and then your oxygen debt drops and you start to calm, and I made it through. But getting off that Dome Argus is one of the greatest days of my life, because you're continually under strain and feeling like no human or anything living should be up there. It's just a brutal place to be.
So I'm going to stop you there. Justin would never ask this question because he gets it. Brutal place, can't breathe, no fun. Like, this is not my view of a holiday. And what is it about Antarctica that just pulls you? Why do it? Like,
why'd you walk across the outback? I mean, come on.
Yeah, but it's not Antarctica. I'm not like
was it a 1-year-old baby through probably 50 degrees? But
the challenge was the 1-year-old baby, not the 50 degrees.
Yeah, at the time you're questioning, what the hell am I doing here? I shouldn't be here. I'm going to put my family through great hardship.
Because you have kids. You have 3 kids, correct?
You have 3, and obviously, with Henry Worsley's death, we all understood how it can happen. We're pushing right at the extremes of human endurance, and you've only got to make a fairly simple mistake for it to end badly. when you're operating at such extremes. But I think, unfortunately, there's just some of us, and you, Lauren and Jonesy, you've got this gene. The adventure gene is there, and if you try and suppress it, it's like putting an eagle in a cage and trying to turn it into a budgie. You're going to be a very unhappy bird. And it's better to live as an eagle with that risk of sudden death than to try and suppress it and live your whole life as a corpse.
Okay, I want to pull on that thread a little bit because we've got to jump into your story in a second. But you said that there. How does your family feel about that? Your wife? How do the people close around to you feel that? Because I know I struggle and battle with it, especially with my parents. They don't get it, even though I think they're some of the most adventurous people I know in their own right. Like, how's that been for you with the home life, managing family?
I think I think. Jonesy, you would know this. How many days was your
which one?
Your road in New Zealand? How many days was that?
New Zealand was 62 days.
But then how many years in the planning was that journey?
3.5.
Yeah, so this is the ratio. So for this longest journey, 58 days in the doing, 7 years in the planning. So for your family, they're privy to all of that pre-prep and planning.
Yeah.
The stressful adventure is when you get some numpty step up with no training, no prep, and he's putting his family through hell. I've had them here. A young guy came and said, I want to climb Mount Cook, and he showed me his gloves, and they were gloves that his mum had knitted. And I said to him, you're not climbing Mount Cook, you're going there to die. And that's a stressful adventurer. Yeah. The adventurer that is really meticulous with his planning, absolutely seeing every bad outcome ahead of time. He has triple contingencies for every piece of gear in his sled. He has seen every outcome. He's studied every failed Antarctic expedition. His diary is full of every failure, what they did well, what they did badly, what I would do. When your family's seeing that level of meticulous detail, there's a peace that comes over the whole affair. And Lauren, your job, unfortunately, as the wiser partner, is to just put the hand up and go, that one's not going to fly. Because Jonesy he'll come up with ideas that'll get him killed. And usually between 35 and 45 in an adventurer's life is the most dangerous time because you haven't got any wisdom yet. If he lives to 45, you'll have him for a long time.
Oh, jeez.
So,
he just turned 37.
I'm 37, so you got 8 more hard years, Lauren.
Exactly. And the other thing is the testosterone levels start to drop. His nuts will shrink, and he will be less problematic to live with. There'll be less ego. He'll be tapping you on the shoulder less at night. Things get a lot easier. And his adventurers...
I see that you've counseled other adventurers before.
Yeah. But honestly, the male-female mind combo in adventure is fascinating to me. I absolutely...
I
agree. Sarah's mind matured at a rate faster than mine. The testosterone levels started to come down. I don't get road rage anymore. It's like just honk and drive past me, whatever. I don't care. I've seen too much. You know, your decision process is clearer. But on this last one, I broke down 3 times, and there was a vulnerability about those breakdowns that I've never had before. I was open and honest with Sarah, explaining to her I'm at my absolute end here. And she knows how much resilience I have. So for me to be telling her that I'm done, I don't think I can put another foot forward. She knew that was extreme. But, rather than the old days where she used to slap me figuratively and go, you talked yourself into this position, you need to now work yourself out of it, harden up and get yourself home. There was a softness there that's come through years of adventuring together as a mental team, which she would just say, listen, I know you feel like you're done, but I think you've got more in you. Double your calories tonight, get 8 hours sleep, and then we'll see if you can get your boots on in the morning. And there was nothing more said than that. But she was also therapizing me. I knew I was getting counseled. I knew she was using basically equine assisted therapy on me without the horse.
You are the horse.
Yeah, well, I think Antarctica was the horse, a big bloody enormous white horse. But the next morning I woke up and I just felt that this incredible strength that comes from the female mind sees way more than we do. And we see it in rock climbing all the time. I'll look at a boulder problem or a climbing problem and I'll try and muscle my way through it, fall off it, and then one of my daughters will get on it and just gracefully use a hold that I've not seen to pass where I was and keep going. And it's because they have this kind of better peripheral vision that we do as male adventurers. So combining those two talents together was really powerful on this longest journey. And I think for you two as a pair of adventurers together, the exciting thing is melding that male-female logic, wisdom, strength, grace, all of that together.
No, it definitely was an amazing experience doing that with Lauren, and something that came up, and I think we've talked about before, but it came up a couple of times on that trip was Lauren, at the start of the journey, she didn't get the whole, I suppose, the reason for the adventure, but as it went along, and she got comfortable with being out there and comfortable with the reason, with adventure as a whole, she far surpassed me. She really did. It was like I was strong and powerful at the start of the trip, and then I started slowly waning, and she just picked up the slack, and we kind of crossed over like that. We hit the end of the trip, and she was like, "Do you want to continue on to Melbourne?" And I was like, "No, I'm broken. I need to stop.
I'm done."
She was just starting.
No, I mean, for me, adventure, to do that was a social experiment because I didn't understand why people would willingly put themselves through this. I think life, I do struggle with anxiety at times, and I think life can be hard enough. And so why, there was either an arrogance or I'm going to be first or best, or I didn't resonate with it. I didn't judge it, and I could see why people did it kind of, but it just wasn't for me. And it wasn't until I met Justin and he would talk about kind of just this experience that he was just pulled to do it more and more. And I wanted to understand that. So going through the Outback for me was a social experiment to understand, I don't want to die not knowing that. And then also, I had this kind of more, I guess, the yin side of the yang was I wanted to be in nature. I work in sustainability and I typically am in an office building all the time. I wanted to live in nature. I wanted to survive out there and actually be one with it. I wanted to not be around cell towers in an urban environment. And I wanted to have this experience with my family and take time because everyone's so busy. All of those things to me were why I adventured. It had nothing to do about the kilometers or, records or anything.
Would you say though that you have had hardship post that adventure that you've related back to the adventure and go, hey, that was nothing on what we went through as a couple in the desert?
Completely, yeah.
And I think that's
Completely.
the key, because what you're doing is a process called hormesis, which is one of the tenets of resilience development. Is if you are wanting to climb, you gradually want to thicken the skin on your fingers. If you push too hard and rip the skin off, you're right back to square one. But you cannot develop that harder skin without hardship, without exposure. So your first adventure was a period of hormesis where you're strengthening everything in your mind, everything in your body, and it's something that you have with you for life. You can go back to that experience and reference off it. And I think for me, one of the hardest periods of my life was being involved with the post-tsunami relief in Aceh in 04-05, and that's my benchmark for hardship. Nothing has ever come close to that. Even dying on Dome Argus was not a patch on that. So for me, that was my hormesis event. And I think one of the things we're teaching young people through adventure is this whole notion that you have to avoid risk, you have to avoid hardship, is wrong. We need to expose ourselves to hardship on a regular basis so that we're ready for the big challenge, whatever it is. And you've had 2 challenges this week, someone with ill health in your friend circle and getting knocked down for an opportunity. Both of those you prep for because you've had periods of hormesis. But if this is your first hardship, you're on your knees and you're not getting up in a hurry. So getting people to understand that it's not just about the adventure, it's about exposing yourself willingly to discomfort, willingly to hardship, and developing a harder core, a a carbon fibre outside that preps you for the big one. Because, if you're breathing, there's challenge coming.
Now, I've got a theory on this, and I reckon you're part of you're going to be part of my sample study of adventurers that I'm going to test this on. So I think a lot of that stems from the childhood that you have and like the hardships. And generally, I think I found that kids, the best adventurers that I know, had really generally awkward childhoods and were bullied or were odd or awkward, or there was something there. Now, like, I remember reading in one of your bios, there was, when you came over because you've got a crazy childhood story, escaping from South Africa, coming over to Australia, and then I think you went to boarding school, and was there a bullying element there that happened in Australia?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the other thing with that is I was born, my mum was on antimalarials, so I was born with a severe cleft palate. I got a head like a half-sucked mango as a result.
Oh, come
on.
Sense of humour that gets you through.
It allows me to not worry about the scars. I just lead with my head and get more scars. But that period of, multiple childhood surgeries, facial surgery, time and time again having to control pain and still be able to function, the bullying potentially, within the Australian school system. I was dropped into a school that was like Lord of the Flies. I don't know whether the school's still there, but they probably all killed each other and eaten each other. It was just a zoo. And for 6 months, I fought every single day, like bare knuckle MMA style, to stay alive. But it taught me this incredible tenacity. But the problem is, some kids would have gone through that and needed trauma counselling for the rest of their life. So how do you can't condone that as a way of toughening kids, because some kids won't get up from it. But I do think that toughness is developed in that first 15 years, definitely.
Yeah, and that's where adventure therapy is so powerful, and adventure exposure is so powerful to young people. I'm a huge fan of it. I mean, because it's the decision making, it's the risk taking. There's consequences to your actions. In a mollycoddled society, you make these. You do these things as a child and there's no impact, no effect, get awards for effort. Whereas in the outdoors, you make a mistake, there are certain consequences. You don't bring a bit of gear and it starts pissing down with rain, or the tent's not good enough. Like you wear the consequences. And I love it. One of the hallmarks of I suppose, experiential learning, the number one key factor is basically how hard it was. It makes it more memorable, like the heart of that experience. So I'm a massive fan. And
I think for, because we're getting into resilience, one of the main reasons that I wanted to get outside of my comfort zone, I guess. I enjoy being comfortable, like I think a lot of us do. But I wanted to get outside of my comfort zone because I wanted to be comfortable in the uncomfortable. And when I was raising daughters, I want them to be resilient. Just like you said, if you're breathing, there's going to be challenges. So as a parent, I want them to be resilient. And I was like, how do I teach them to be resilient if I don't know if I've learned it for myself wholly? So, and adventure for me, marrying someone that has learned these lessons, and I can see, the world's very unstable. Look, we're going back into lockdown in Melbourne. People are losing jobs left and right. I work in sustainability. The climate's changing. I think the next 50 years are going to be very interesting. And how do we ready ourselves to not only survive, but thrive so that we can show up in our highest form? And I think that to me is resilience. And I was so excited when it's been kind of a crap week that we got to talk to you, Jeff, because you're an expert in resilience. And I think, should we dive into
I think we should.
He has a little story about resilience that I think...
I think really we should get into the story. And Jeff, I've obviously got some of your photos ready to go. So if you want to talk about certain photos, I can drop them in. But we do have that video waiting for you whenever you want to use it. But Jeff, I might throw it in.
Yeah, we've been fortunate for you guys to be able to release this, because Karen, who is my very clever media agent, has been holding onto this like gold.
Because you have a documentary coming out.
Yeah, documentary Icemen, which is a history of polar survival over the last 200 years, will be out in September. So we're really excited. We'll punch that through to you guys as soon as it's out. The exciting thing with that is it's not just my story. It's sort of weaving in the tapestry of all of Jonesy's heroes, my heroes, you know, guys like Mawson, Shackleton, Scott, Eric Phillips, Berger, Usland, all of these, the greats, you know. So, but, you know, the resilience message is weaved in there subtly as well. But today we were going to just talk about the day 56 on this last expedition was a day where I met yet another bear. And I talk about a bear as a predator on any journey that is there to tear you limb from limb. And generally you can prepare for just about anything, but a bear is something that in your life you would not see coming. And whether you call it a lion or a bear, the reason bear means so much to me as a challenge that could tear you from limb to limb is when Katali, who's now 19, finished school, he was 17, and I pitched to Sarah, hey, listen, I think I should take him on a you know, a hormesis developing journey, get some toughness into him, but it'll be nice and easy. We'll just do a short kayak trip, less than 250 kilometers. We'll do it in Alaska because it's a nice backdrop. Anyway, so she agreed.
This is your oldest son, correct?
Yeah, oldest son.
Okay.
So the youngest child, last one to leave the house. And anyway, so we get dropped off by aircraft on the top of the Brooks Range, and we're kayaking through. We make a mistake on day one, ruin all the satellite comms gear, and we're cut off from the outside world for 4 days. Sarah's having a panic attack. She's about to hit, you know, rescue when I finally get the sat phone dried out in some rice, and I couldn't use all the numbers, but I managed to call and get it to let her know we're alive. We decided not to climb the mountain that we were there to climb because of the fact that we didn't have any comms gear. Day 8, we come around the corner and there's a grizzly bear on the bank just eating berries, looking like a big rabbit. And I go, hey, Kit, grizzly. And he flares his kayak behind me, and this thing stands up, and it goes from like a nice little brown rabbit-looking creature to a 9-foot man-killing machine. And before I've had chance to think flare, bear spray, get the hell out of here, he's on a full charge. And it just went from all peaceful to just terrifying within a millisecond. And he's bounding his 350 kilo bulk down the bank, gravel spraying out the back, and I'm thinking very quickly, this bear's going to be on me in a millisecond. Surely the water, I was about 30 feet off the bank, will stop him. No, he hit the water like a Honda Civic doing 60k an hour and surfed along his chest the first sort of 10 feet, and then smacked into the water, and then just stopped about 15 feet from me. 2 more strokes and he would have been onto me, and there's no way I could have fought him off. It was just so quick. But it's this incredible moment where you realise, you know, there's a supernatural event, because this bear had every intention of killing me and potentially Kit as well. Something happened there to protect me. It was like he hit a glass wall. It was like watching a Labrador run into a plate glass wall. The same thing happened day 56 in Antarctica, and if you're doing this lifestyle, occasionally you will meet bears, and we'd spent a lot of time on this journey using all the tech available by satellite imagery to deep ground penetrating sonar, look for crevassing, which for those of you who don't know what crevasse is, if you imagine ice is flat, when it bends over a feature, it'll split, and you'll get these terrible cracks that just cover with a little bit of snow over the top. We'll show you a little bit of a video here. If you have a look at the crevassing, you'll see leading ice edge and then a dip with a shallow bridge of snow, which could only be inches thick, over a hole the size of an apartment complex. When you're traveling into that situation, when you've spent so much time trying to avoid broken ice, it feels very similar to what it felt like to have this bear suddenly enter your world, and your chances of survival go from very high to very low very quickly. Every time you cross one, you're waiting for the sleds to pull you backwards through them. It's a terrifying feeling. And I think, you know, true resilience is meeting bears in your life and being able to keep your head, dust yourself off, exit that situation, and then do it all again.
No.
knowing that there's more bears to come. I think for those of us who've met, significant bears in your life that have then taken your legs out from under you and limited your ability to go forward, that's the real shame. You may as well have got eaten by the bear. There'd be a more exciting way to go. I think what we're trying to pass on is the tools to meet your bear and yet put yourself back together and keep on adventuring. And whether that adventure is a corporate, family, a health, or a genuine adventure in a wilderness situation, these, they bear fruit. So I'll probably get Jonesy to play that video. And as we're coming into the end, we've only been able to show a very little bit of the crevassing, obviously because that's some of the gold for the upcoming movie. But you'll be able to see what it feels like to hit a crevasse field at speed with a kite, still pulling well over your body weight, knowing that you might get across, but you're just waiting for the sled to break through. Jonesy, those two images, there's an image of the sled that's gone over the lip of a crevasse.
Yeah, I'll just I'll throw one in. Hold on 1 second. Is it this one? Sorry, I'm just going to drop it in.
So this is where I've seen the edge of a crevasse is on the way, and I've done a baseball slide turn, and the sleds have gone over the edge of the crevasse and onto the ice cap, which is just a thin bit of snow. I sat down on this ledge and swung my boots over, thinking, well, if it's taking the weight of the sled, it must be really thick. My boots popped through into just a big blue hole below. You pull up that next image, you can see the blue hole.
No, this is something Lauren's got a preview before everyone else. This is something I can definitely relate to. I mean, this is
that's just air under there.
So that's just air, and if you stepped on that without skis, your weight would be distributed over too small an area, and you'd plummet through, and you could be falling for 30 seconds before you hit the deck.
Yeah,
they're big holes. So we'll go and play this video, and you can see why it was a bear for me on day 56.
All right, here's the video.
And Antarctica saved the worst ice for the last.
So this is a section where I can see crevasse ice ahead. The sleds kept flipping. You can see the sleds almost snapping in half here. The bottom of the Kevlar is completely gone. I'm within probably 300 kilometres of home, or the end point, and up ahead here on the horizon, all the ice is broken. So I'm desperately trying to find a safe way out of here. Sleds flipped again. See that the Kevlar's all breaking there.
You're lucky this happened towards the end.
Yeah, if it happened earlier, the sleds just wouldn't have made it. Probably another 200k, I don't think those sleds would have made it. So here's coming into the crevassed area. Now, there's the cap coming up, straight over it, heart in your mouth. Another one, hard over in your mouth. These little ones you can handle, but then the big ones, so here's a big opening coming up. Sleds have gone in and they're pulling me backwards into that cap. So, I mean, that period was probably only 3 hours, but I counted over 70 crevasses that I had to cross. And every time you tried to convince yourself that the snow bridge was thicker than I thought, you'd have an accident and poke it with a end of a ski or your boot and realised that it was only the speed of the sleds that was getting me across them. If you tried to walk across them, the cap would have gone, and that's the end of it. No matter how close you were to home, no one's going to save you out of one of those things.
Yeah.
So it was really probably the combination of fatigue, a navigational error, and then just not scanning that area properly that led me into that area. And you can't help but feel angry at yourself because you've made a mistake, but then you're aware that anger creates more calorie drain. It creates the potential for making more bad decisions and then having a domino effect. So you're trying to go kind on yourself, back things up, slow it down, and make good decisions. But a normal person, having survived that, would pack up. That's it. I'm done. I don't want to meet another bear in my life. But I know from doing it time and time again, there will be a time of healing from something like that. But then genuinely, if we are who we say we are, if we are wide the way we are, as soon as your body's recovered, you're starting to dream and vision again. And we've talked, just without any sort of set structure today, but we've covered 3 out of 4 of the real tenets of resilience development. And I like to talk about the window of resilience, or the window of tolerance, which is that part of your life where when you're within that window of tolerance, you feel like you're the master of your domain. There's nothing within that area that you could be thrown, that you don't know how to handle, and you're comfortable with how everything's going. But to just stay in that place is a very dangerous place to be. And I think Australia's depression, anxiety, suicide, apathy all comes from being kept in that cage for too long. If you don't step outside your window of tolerance and start developing a bit of intestinal fortitude, strength, resilience, whatever we call it, then you run the risk of withering and dying. And that's just the nature of the human condition. There's nothing you can do about that. So you have to work with it. And the 4 ways you can stretch that window, we've talked about 3 already. The vulnerability, absolutely key. For me, in Antarctica, to get full stretch of my window of tolerance, I had to be vulnerable and open with Sarah. We talked about the hormesis, which is that process of expanding yourself and stretching and getting strength. That pulls it out the other way. The other thing we talked about is dreaming and visioning. So to stretch that window, you have to be involved in dreaming and visioning. The final thing we haven't talked about is just having a believer. And, for you guys as a pair of adventurers living together, you've got your own believer there. Whatever Jonesy cooks up or whatever Lauren cooks up, as long as it's within certain guidelines of wisdom, then you are the believer. You're the strongest person on the paddock to make sure that no matter what bears come along, that dream will come to pass and you'll have this incredible resilience and stretch of the window of tolerance to get the job done. So that's a really quick précis of that whole process, but it's so powerful. Whether you're dealing with, a woman with breast cancer, just trying to dream and vision herself back to full health, or whether you're dealing with an explorer stuck on an Antarctic ice cap with no way home, or someone who's just got a business that looks like it's going to go to the wall. It all applies.
And it's so true. I mean, it's funny because you had said, Jeff, now that you've done this expedition when you went to the outback, do you use that, if that was my hormesis, which is I really love the structure, the vulnerability, the hormesis, the dreaming, the believer. If that was my hormesis and that followed, this dreaming point that, oh my God, I can get out of my, window of tolerance. My window of tolerance was very small. I mean, it wasn't like I moved across the world to Australia not knowing anyone to do something, but it was still in a very safe environment. I had never really stepped outside to where I was like, I could massively fail and what would happen. But I think, with the hormesis, when you're in the outback, the first month wasn't fun. Like, I remember asking Justin, like, are you having fun yet? Because if you're having fun, then obviously that's my social experiment and we just think things are different levels of fun. Because this wasn't fun. It wasn't until 6 weeks that and our expedition was, I guess, thankfully very long. It was 102 days, which I think is pretty long for for your first expedition.
Yeah, unbelievable.
And 1,800 Ks. But that first 6 weeks, it wasn't fun. But after that, I realized that, we said that it was survival, then it was the new normal, and then it was thriving. And I've used that so many times in COVID. First it was survival. It was, this isn't fun, or this is scary, or, oh my God, what's happening to the world? I can't fly back to America as my 98-year-old grandmother, the industry's collapsing. Like, there's been so many things, and I'm like, it's just survival. Put your boots on and walk one step, and then it was just this new normal where you're like, okay, we've kind of adjusted, like now the world is kind of
adaptation phase.
It's this adaptation phase. But I think then where are we going to go from here? And what skills do we need to not let the bear eat our legs?
Definitely.
Because we need to step up into, that thrive mode. And a lot of people don't have these tools that they've learned that they can rely on. And I think these things are really important to remember that, when you haven't done something like this process is normal.
Yeah, and I think, did you notice something, Lauren, on that process? Like, when you're in the survive mode, you don't notice the colours, you don't notice that the sand is purple just before sunset, you don't notice the wildflowers, and you're not able to enjoy it. But then suddenly you get this realisation that, hey, I'm actually pretty good at this.
Yeah.
I wish I was better at something else. But then you start to get into this mode where you can see the different colours in the ice, you can see the patterns, you understand that the sastrugi, actually have a beauty to them. And then you start to realise, wow, if I'm seeing the beauty, now I'm loving the environment, now I'm likely to break some records. Like, until you understand that where you are is beautiful, you haven't adapted to it properly. There's plenty of journeys where I can see people have just muscled their way through it, but they haven't learnt a lot through the journey. They haven't learned to love that part of the planet, that wilderness, and I think probably don't get as much out of the journey. But I think when you push through to this new level of resilience, you're then able to see that beauty, and through seeing that, understand that you've grown somewhat during the journey. And that's kind of the point. It's not about the adventure, it's about your growth as a human being. And I think understanding that we can pass those things on. For me, as a desperately average bloke, 80 kilos, average height, I can pass on these resilience tips, these mental cues to young ones coming through so that we can propel them to greatness. Whereas if it's just about the adventure, it's not something I can teach. If I'm built like a brick shithouse and I'm trying to explain to someone that they can do what I've done, they're looking at you at your 120 kilos of Russian muscle going, oh, I will never do what that guy does or that girl does. I think that's why I've been placed right in the middle of the curve as Mr. Average, because I can genuinely say to people, listen, it's not my physique, it's not my frame, it's the size of the line within me, and I can teach you to be that line.
Yep. And I think that's, before we had done the Outback, I think I had glamped more than I had camped. It wasn't something.
You definitely glamped more than you camped.
It wasn't something that I, was ready to do or prone to do. It was literally that visioning that was so outside of the box that you're like, hey, but let's see if you can. And I think you nailed it. That first month, I thought something was wrong with me because I couldn't see the beauty. And I was in this natural environment that I craved to be in, and I literally was just surviving. And it wasn't about 1,800 kilometers. It was about the next, we had 6 checkpoints kind of where we picked up food. It was about getting to that checkpoint and reassessing whether we can continue. And then if that was too long, it was getting to the next day. If that was too long, it was getting to the next hour. If that was too long, it was getting to the next step. And it was really interesting, these mind games that you'd play. And then by the time we were on day, 60, I remember we had a 30K walk in 42-degree weather, no shade, and I thought it was the most beautiful place I'd ever been. And I was like, what drug am I on? This is so weird. Different. But it took 60 days to kind of come into that point of, I guess, hormesis, but I had never heard of any of this before. So I think it's really fascinating that this is kind of something that anybody can do.
Yeah, and that's the thing, you know. The other side of it is that it's entirely selfish to put yourself in an endeavour where you're stuck in a tent solo in Antarctica for, you know, best part of 3 months by the time you get your ins and outs. But if you can take that experience, percolate out some real adventure throughs, and with adventure thinking, change the way somebody looks at challenge, then you're starting to make some good out of your selfish decisions. And then I think my family, you know, would be less supportive of these journeys if they weren't seeing some life change happening in people around us and people we're connecting with. So it is an amazing process to watch. When, you know, we had a guy who we trained with us for polar survival in New Zealand last year, and to watch him strip 15 kilos, get some self-confidence, and just change his whole outlook to challenge in his life was, you know, one of those great moments for me, which justifies what we're doing.
Can I ask one kind of follow-up question to that, around kind of when you come off the mountaintop? You know, when you're finished with your adventure, because I've really struggled with this. You've gone into the unknown, you've changed, you know, on these expeditions, and you come back to normal life. Do you have any kind of advice on how do you bring these together? How do you rest and recuperate? How do you, you know, merge? You're a vet, you have a family, and you do adventures. You know, you seem to have mixed those in a way that they work together, even though they're very separate things. Do you have any advice on how, when you've pushed yourself beyond this comfort zone, but you come back into kind of the normal, how do you do that well? Because a lot of people are doing that with COVID. They're going back into the offices, but they're very different. How do you reemerge off the mountaintop and come back into real life, keeping the lessons, but also not losing yourself in the process?
Yeah, and that's a really tough one, Lauren. It's definitely something that you get better at with every expedition. But if I go back to our Greenland crossing, it was Simon, my son-in-law's first sort of polar challenge. And I remember, you know, we were sitting waiting for pickup on the Arctic Ocean right at the north of Greenland, and we heard this bark. We'd been waiting for 2 days. We were out of food, and the Inuit had struggled to find us because we were out of position as to where we'd said we'd be. Anyway, they found us amazingly, and we're then on the sleds heading back to civilization. And I said to Simon, before we get back there, you need to be aware of something that I call the post-expedition blues. Yeah. And he's like, okay, what is that? And I said, well, you've just been through 18 days of some of the most intense survival of your life. You're going to go back, and things like people honking at traffic or people complaining about their latte not being up to temperature are going to seem trivial, and you're going to be tempted to write them off. But you need to understand that for them in that moment, that is a big thing. But you also need to understand you can't live in the expedition state forever. Then it would become just mundane and boring and meaningless. So we have to prepare, and you've got to find the joy in your recovery. You've got to find the joy in your body getting back to its full strength. Enjoy the sleep-ins and the laziness while it can be there, because pretty soon you'll be pulling tides again on the beach at 5 a.m. Enjoy it while you can, and then get into the dreaming and visioning. And if we go to that other corner of the window of tolerance for people coming out of COVID, they have to build what I call a faith eye image of where they want to be post-COVID. Start dreaming and visioning, drawing that down in their journal. What does it look like? What does it feel like? Start meditating on it, immersing in it. And that is the grappling hook that's going to pull you out of this crisis and give you something to breathe for, something that gets your boots on in a hurry in the morning. And it doesn't have to be an Antarctic crossing. It doesn't have to be a young family walking across the red centre of Australia. It can be anything that puts you slightly out of your comfort zone, but it's something that will get you moving through that post-expedition blue and then through the other side. And I think the other part of that question is how to get the balance between work, family, and adventure. I think it's got to a point now where it kind of feels like the vet life is such a passion. Like I love working with animals, putting them back together, watching how Australians are leaning into their animals in this tough time has been beautiful. But also realising that to stay fresh in that, I have to get back into the wilderness on a regular basis. This is Fat Alice on the screen. She's my overweight Labrador. It's embarrassing as a vet. I just cannot get the fat off her. For years, people have been going, oh, I don't feed him anything. And I'm thinking, yeah, what a load of shit. You've been feeding that dog half a cow every day. She literally runs on a couple of bits of kibble and she's still fat.
Polar ready, not fat, polar ready, Jeff.
Yeah,
polar ready.
She'd be an awesome sled dog. But, you know, that love for animals combined with the love for the wilderness has been quite an easy transition now. But what I haven't done well all the time is the family balance. And I think pre the tsunami in 04-05, I was super focused on building a very strong veterinary company that could bankroll all of these adventures. And with that single-minded focus in mind, started to lose time with the young ones who were probably about your kid's age at the time, and got out of balance. And Sarah felt that she was losing me. I was, you know, getting dragged into the Gold Coast kind of glitz and glamour and stuffism, you know, too much stuff. And then going through the tsunami, I realised of the 1,000 people that I did interviews for Medicines du Monde up there, not one of them gave a damn about stuff. So it came back and we put all of our businesses under management, bought a sailboat and went to sea for 14 months. And during that 14 months, I realised when we did the math, I had 12 years worth of dad time in one single year. So I kind of caught up on all of that lost time, and I've never let the work side of things ever erode my family time since then. And I think it's, you know, if somebody calls you after 5 o'clock, it's family time. There better be a damn good reason for him or her interrupting family time. And I always put it, if I'm earning $50 an hour, 9 till 5, for me to be picking something up after 5, I better be earning $150 an hour. I had to triple my rate on family time.
Yeah.
And, you know, just putting real monetary value on somebody eroding into your valuable family time. There are seasons where you do have to chew into it, whether it's expedition prep or a business that needs an extra injection of time and love to get it going. But, you know, accepting as a human being that the value of family time is really powerful. And I think that's really helped me over the last 10 years keep that more in check.
I'm writing notes here because that's a big one for me. I can be at times, you know, get a little bit not present.
Well,
sometimes.
Even when you're here, you're sometimes
sometimes when I'm here, I'm not
the...
here. And I apologise also, Jeff, because I called you after 5:30 p.m. yesterday, so that was
so
me.
you owe him $300.
I owe you some money, probably.
You get a bill.
Yeah, well, actually, you didn't pick up, so you stuck to your values.
No,
You're like,
I saw
he's
that.
not worth
But, you know,
it.
that-
He's not worth it. Hang up.
I saw your call. And it was family time.
Yeah.
And, you know, you're an important contact in my life, but
so
I'm like, no, I'll pick it up. I'll pick it up in the morning, and we managed to connect this morning and got the job done. But I could have picked that up and lost, you know, 3 to 4 minutes of family time.
Oh, and also the time you need kind of to your headspace is taken away, and sometimes you might be thinking of something for 10 minutes afterwards. It's more than that phone call. And like I've noticed that with me. So I've written that down, Jeff. Thank you for the reminder, and to go sailing.
And for me, I think it's clarifying what you value. You know, you said that you realized that, you know, at the end of the day, the experience in Indonesia made you realize that what you value is this family time, and you then made a vision of how do I kind of bring that back in, and then you were able to kind of rearrange all those pieces to make it work and still come back to your vet practice and still come back to your solo adventuring and go on a big thing with your family. Like Justin and I, that mix is not easy. And I think we're just in the middle of it.
Yeah,
like we have a 7-month and a 4-year-old, and my passion is sustainability. Like I think that the world we're in a precipice that we can make change now, and we need to show up and create the world that we want to live in, because if we don't do anything, it's not going to be a very pretty place to live. And loving nature, I want to protect that. So that's a piece of me as a human. And then I feel the same way. We have our family life, and then we also have the way that we want to show up and live in the world and not have regrets.
Well, I think the real challenge for you guys is you're both big thinkers, you're big dreamers, but it's making sure that you're dreaming at an appropriate time and it's not making you distant from each other when you're together. And I think the real power of an adventurous relationship, an adventurous life, is being really present when you're together and gaining as much time as you can, because it's it happens very quickly. Katali leaves for his first expedition tomorrow. He's 19. I feel like it was only yesterday that he came kicking and screaming into the world, and I feel like I've done the best I can as a dad over that 19 years. I've adventured with him all over the planet. We've had some great highs, great lows together as a father-son adventuring pair, and with my daughters as well. We've had, glorious times, but it's gone in a heartbeat. And I hate to think of the times where he might have approached me and I seemed distant, or he might have asked me something and I was dreaming of an Antarctic shore or an African sunset. So even the adventurous mindset can mean that you are a dreamer and you're distant mentally at a lot of times. So getting a real discipline about, if I'm with my wife, she's my princess, I give her 110% of my attention. When she goes to sleep, I sneak out and I go and Google, has anyone dragged a set of boobs across Antarctica? That's when it's done. If my son puts his hand on my arm to ask me something and I'm dreaming of a faraway shore, then I'm that crazy distant dad. I don't ever want to be that. I think for you guys, you've just got to be so aware of that. That's the way you're wired, but bring a discipline into it that'll mean that you'll be on the rocking chair together as connected in 60 years or as you are now. There's a real beauty in that, and the adventurous life is a phenomenal one, but it does require real mental discipline to make sure that you're present around your loved ones. Otherwise, I've met so many people, Jonesy, you would have met these guys, the hardest men on the planet, in the worst places on the planet, and they have left a wake of relationship destruction behind them.
Well,
they've got nothing. And what is the point?
That was your fear.
Yeah, that's my fear, and that was part of the reason why I wanted to see how to merge family and adventure, because our field has a high rate of divorce. It really, really does. That's all anecdotal, but I'm sure we could do some studies into it and you get pretty high figures. So how do you blend that? And it's this is a relationship counseling session as much as anything. I think this is fantastic. Doctor to people and to animals. Now, but there's some amazing stuff here, and one thing that you said a little bit earlier was about that post-expedition depression, post-expedition blues, coming back to it and having, choosing your time when to have your adventurous mindset, like choosing your time when to have your expedition mindset, I should say, and your regular life mindset. And, that's really important for me because I am forever dreaming. I've got to learn how to switch out that. There's good and bad that comes with the expedition mindset. With the expedition mindset, there's no problem is insurmountable. You can overcome absolutely anything when you're in that mode, but you miss out on a lot of other stuff because you can sometimes become, you're aware of what's going on, but you're focused on the issue, the problem. You miss out on family things. So I'm taking that on board and I'm listening to that, and I'm going to be a more present human in this household.
So funny. Sarah will know, if I'm holding her hand and there's a shift in, I've got quite sweaty palms, and if I'm thinking adventure, I will sweat immediately. So she knows, and she'll look at me and go, "Come back to me. Where are you?" And I will pop back and I'll go, listen, probably reliving Dome Argus or reliving arriving back at Novo, or, you know, I just had a thought about a bear or whatever it is. I will let her know where I've been, and then that'll bring me back. Yeah. So, you know, countless times, and I think part of our job in adventurous couples is understanding when that drift starts to happen and understanding that a certain amount of dreaming is required. That's what makes us exciting to live with, but also using some of that dreaming energy to build romantic things into your life. You know, you're at a point of time where there's two young ones and romance is going to be difficult to grab, but using that dreaming and an expedition, making an expedition picnic to the park with a bottle of wine or something like that as a short-term goal. But, you know, not trying to clip the wings off the eagle. That's I see it a lot with couples where you've got one adventurer partnered with a non-adventurer, and that can be man, woman, you know, same-sex couples, whatever it is. It doesn't matter. It's the fact that you've got an eagle who needs to fly occasionally to feel like he or she is still feeling the wind under his wings, and then the other partner, to keep them safe, starts clipping the tail feathers and then clipping the wings, and then 20 years later, they're married to a fat budgie that can't even get out of the cage. And they're like, what happened to this guy? Or what happened to this girl? And I'm like, well, hey, I've watched this happen. You cut this guy's wings. And the reason he can't waddle anymore is that he has been trying to be the best dad or the best father in the only way he's been told how. He should have just stuck to his adventurous DNA. He would have been way more fun to be with. He would have stayed prime weight, and he'd still want to romance you and be present mentally for you. So I think there's real danger there when we get an unequal partnership. You know, one couple doesn't understand the adventurous gene, and you guys have got this rare privilege that from the outset you have an understanding of that. So I don't think it's going to be any counselling needed. You'll be fine.
Well, I think I don't know if I have it to the level that Justin has it, but I have the curiosity of life that will drive me to, you know, want to, just like you said, I don't want to have regrets.
Experiences.
You know, and so, but I think that I really love, just make sure to be present even in the everyday stuff, you know, so that you would have had regrets if your son was going off on this expedition, or if you hadn't been present, he probably wouldn't be going on an expedition. So the fact that you were present and encouraged him and he saw your passion, it's just this fine mix of being present, following your passions, so that your kids can see you living your best life, or your partner can see you living your best life, and kind of bringing your whole self. And I find that an uncomfortable, not uncomfortable, but I find it you know, a lot of people go to work and they have to leave who they are at the door. And I think that that's a lost opportunity, you know, or you go to adventure and you have to leave the family man at the door, or you go to the vet and you have to leave the adventure at the door.
You're some of your old parts.
I love that this is coming together, that we are better for having differences.
And I think COVID's taught us a lot. You know, we can be more open, more vulnerable. We're all aware that time is precious. And I, you know, one of the amazing things, my eldest daughter Jade, who's married to Simon, came home and said she was listening to a podcast, I think, and one of the comments was, one of the saddest things for a child is having a parent with unmet expectation in their life. And she just came and said, Dad, thank you so much for not ever having unmet expectation in your life. And I thought, you know, that's so true. If we clip our own wings because we think that that's what's best for the family, it creates great sadness and unmet expectation, and then that passes on to our kids, to our partner. So there's a real onus to continuing that risk-taking lifestyle, that adventurous lifestyle, charging forward to your expectations, and demanding more from life, having occasional, what I would call pound the ground moments. And the pound the ground moment is that point in any expedition where things have gone absolutely to shit. Nothing's going to plan, and you punch the ice with absolute fervour and demand a new set of cards. I know at the start of the Greenland journey, we had spent a week just getting onto the plateau, making very low mileage, and based on our daily mileage, we weren't going to break any record other than the first Australians to starve on the Greenland plateau. And I started punching this kite into a ball and punching a hole in the snow, and Simon came up and he was upset with himself because he felt that he had upset me. And he said, "What's going on? What have I done?" And I said, No, you've done nothing. You've been phenomenal. I'm just demanding a new set of cards. This is what we call the pound the ground moment. And over the next week, we set the record for the greatest distance covered by a duo at 1,120 kilometres in 7 days to that date. So there are times in your life where you just need to go, right, that's it. I've had enough. I'm pounding the ground and I'm going to demand a new set of cards. And, these sort of things don't happen without an adventurous mindset. So to try and clip someone's wings and turn them into a bonsai, I can't even look at a bonsai plant because for me, the bonsai plant it just makes me want to vomit, because that's what we try and do to adventurous people. We want them to be a bonsai and fit our construct of life, but we should be congratulating and putting people like Jonesy on a pedestal and saying this is someone who is living true to their nature. They're being vulnerable, they're being open, they should be applauded. And just like we treat our football stars, as an example of what we can be as human beings and stretching.
Well, I think every human has a part of that adventurous piece within them. It's like every human has some creativity, but it's kind of been drilled out of us in some ways, versus every human has some of that adventurousness that has been clipped. And I think having these conversations is a way to feel like it's okay to want to chase a different way of living, or it's okay to want to brave a new path if something's not working. And I think that's I love the way that you've lived your life, Jeff. I think it's really interesting of how you've raised your children, of how you followed your passion with your veterinarian, how you keep challenging. And it sounds like you have a really amazing relationship with your wife and your kids. And I think all in all, if there is value in the world, that would be it.
Yeah, and Lauren, that's not come easy. I think when we've got so much heartache around us, and we have so many friends whose relationships and marriages have gone to the wall, there was a time there where we almost felt embarrassed for being madly in love after 27 years of marriage. And then I felt like, this is part of it. We have to be a beacon of hope for young ones coming through that, with some certain key disciplines, you can maintain a relationship for life. This whole see it, eat, root it, run, I want that, I want this, the stuffism, the materialism, it's not the way to get a long-term relationship to work.
Well, I wonder how much of your adventure lessons you've put into your relationship too. I mean,
definitely.
It's very similar,
I don't attribute that success to me. I think Sarah's wisdom, and a lot of, I know it seems unfair that the women have to be the wise ones, but it's just the way you are. You're more sensible. I say to my veterinary nurses, listen, women get better, men get worse. So if he's fat and depressed at 40, dump him and move on. He's going to be worse at 50. So get rid of the guy and move on.
You looked at me then, Lauren.
No, you're not funny.
I know that seems harsh, but
you're about the furthest from fat and depressed.
No, you are not. And I'm not trying to be offensive to people that are fat and depressed. I'm just saying that unfortunately a lot of the wisdom in the relationship will come from you, Lauren, when you're partnered with an adventurous soul. and it'll keep Jonesy alive for a lot longer having you there. Whereas I've seen this horrible effect where an expeditioner without a believer in his corner or her corner will do an expedition, he'll get to his or her goal, and then they feel like they've got to create another journey that's even more radical, more dangerous, and then they'll make that one by the skin of their teeth, and then the next one will kill them.
Yeah, no, that's it's the scariest thing, and something every adventurer has to keep in mind is that the ego is what's kind of driving and pushing at that stage when they don't have that person or thing to come back to, that cause, and that's a dangerous state.
But I think that goes down to value. Why are you doing it? What's important?
Yeah.
Is it to become the best version of yourself, or is it to follow a record and to have an ego? Or, you know, like, I think that's the main check of, are you doing it because you're trying to really live, you know, be the best for the world and be the best for yourself, or are you trying to just be the best in the world?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely key, Lauren, is understanding, getting your why you're there at the outset is so important, because when the bear comes and you don't have a good why for being there, he's going to roll you over. Whereas if you've got a good reason for being there, you'll win every time.
And that's what we did on this third expedition. We got really clear on our why. I
think. 100% beforehand. And
our mission as a family, to live curious, live kind, and live great. And there's kind of a whole set of principles under that. And we know that if we're living in that way, that we're aligned. And if we're not living in that way, then we need to make some adjustments. And we pretty much hold true to that, even though...
Yeah, we don't make the best sort of
we've
like
had
decisions
some massive
sometimes.
Changes in the last couple weeks even.
We'll make decisions that aren't, you know, the best financial choice, but stick to our values, and you know we'll do that, and we don't regret that. I mean, I think if we chase the paycheck, you know, and you leave your values or your passion at the door, then you're always going to regret that. You're always going to look back and think about, I have this discomfort from that moment. And life is about sort of making sure that you don't have those uncomfortable moments that you live with forever.
And I'm conscious it's
time.
It's time, but I just wanted to, I think, to recap a couple things.
Okay, you recap, and then I'll ask a couple of last questions.
So I loved the hormesis, and I'm definitely going to dive deeper in that. I think it's, you know, that that thing that puts you out of your comfort zone that then you can mark any other challenges against, and it strengthens you as a human. I think, you know, really understanding your window of tolerance, and if you stay within that for too long, you know, it's a very limiting place to live, and it's not a very healthy place to live. You know, embracing vulnerability, dreaming and visioning, but also being present in the moment, finding that balance, and then following, you know, your purpose in what you're doing these, and really, you know, what do you value, and being and surrounding yourself with believers in your corner, that allows you to do that, I think are all really great gems that I took from this conversation.
Awesome, Laurie. You were very present, weren't you?
She's just so good like that. I mean, like, I'm still half thinking about the crevasses that you were showing before, because like that when I saw that, by the way, automatic memories come back for me. I mean, there's the moment in the documentary on Antarctica that I can't watch now, because it's us crossing this crevasse, and you know, like setting up a camera and filming it, and like I'm watching it now knowing that I survived. I'm like, oh god, this guy's an idiot. Like, I feel horrible inside. And
then there he goes. He's off in a crevasse.
Sorry,
then bringing it back to post-expedition blues, I think that's a key one that I wasn't aware of. You know, knowing that you've changed, when you've gone out of your comfort zones, knowing you've changed, and refreshing that vision of what works for you now as you've evolved, I think is also really important. You know, like, a lot of people are going to have changed a lot since they've been home with COVID, and they might be valuing their time at home and their time with their family, and going back into the office structure might not work, and challenging that, I think, is okay, and putting a new vision out about what matters in your life, I think, is really important. And then, Jeff, we always try to do something, if you can tell people if they are going to if they're thinking, man, I'm, you know, overweight and depressed, or man, I want my life's not feeling like I'm in that, what did you call it, the window of tolerance, and I'd like to get out of it. Where do I start? Could you give them one or two pieces of advice that they could put in place today, this week, to get them moving out of that?
Yeah, window? I think that the first step to moving, and I think if it's, say we took someone who was overweight and just can't seem to beat that thing, it's just about making the steps small. So don't, say if I'm 20 kilos overweight, don't build a faith eye image of you, looking like a Greek Adonis at prime weight. Just go, hey, listen, let's try and lose 5 kilos over a couple of months, but then draw an image of what you look like in your mind at 5 kilos lighter, and maybe attach to that things that you could do, cut out a little bit of calories, increase your workload slightly, and just make that small step. And I think once you get a small step, there's a feedback loop, you feel good about yourself, you can then build a slightly bigger step for the next one. But if you build a big, a lot of these weight programs are like, you're going to lose 30 kilos in 8 weeks or whatever. It's just too big. You get disappointed, and then you go, bugger it, I'm going back to the fridge. So just make it a small step, and understand that we all have more in us than we actually believe. We're actually built a lot tougher. We're harder to kill than your brain will tell you, and that's because your brain is building this safety network within yourself, so that you don't extend yourself and get yourself too close to the edge. But you can trick that and move a bit closer to the edge, and understand that you have way more in you than you believe.
It was such a good reminder for us, actually, just taking Morgan into the outback, because you see in a child how resilient and how adaptable she was, because she hasn't got a lot of this pre-programming that you get from society.
Well, and everything is new for her. So this is just
everything was new for her at the time, and to see that, and you're like, shit, we're, as human beings, we're so much more capable than we give ourselves credit for, and relearn to be like a child, be curious again, be happy to fail, because that's how you live life. You have those moments.
Well, they don't have a window of tolerance, children, because everything is new and pushing them outside of their comfort zone because they don't have one. I mean, even like our 7-month-old is crawling, everything is a push for her, it's not until I feel like we get sedentary and you build these like safe walls around and these comfy couches and your direct commute to work and everything is very laid out that you shut yourself down.
We should burn the couch, be more uncomfortable.
No, I love the couch. It's my favorite thing.
Conscious of timing, so a couple of quick questions to kind of wrap everything up. Lauren, that was a cracker sort of summation of everything.
No, thank you to Jeff. Those amazing tidbits on how to kind of build our resilience in everyday life.
This is kind of the perfect time, I think, for us, for the world. It was a great conversation. Jeff, how do people find out what's going on with you?
Probably best thing, we've pared it down pretty simple, just Instagram, Dr. Jeff Wilson. Love you to connect. If there's any dream that you have, you want input on or encouragement. And I love talking to people with small dreams. Don't feel like you can't come to me with a small dream. If you want to lose 10 kilos and want me to be your believer, I will be your believer. I've had so many people be my believer. I feel like I need to give it back. So contact me on Instagram, DM me, and let's get involved in pushing your dream forward.
Slide into your DMs. Now, Jeff, I've got a question to ask you, and someone else actually raised this on Instagram and sent me a note. I've forgotten the name of the person, sorry. But what is the go with, and I actually know the answer, but what is the go with this, mate? Hold on, I'll blow this picture up. You mentioned boobs across Antarctica. I'm going to put that, I shouldn't put that above Lauren, I'll put that above me. There we go. Boobs across Antarctica. What is the go with this sled?
Yeah, that was the prototype, and the sled, the nipples kept icing up. So it got heavier and heavier. Really bad. So we ended up making the boobs out of Kevlar. Sarah joked that she could have got a boob job cheaper than the Kevlar, but we molded the sled out of Sarah's boobs, and the idea was that it was for a breast cancer charity. A friend of mine, Katie Carlisle, was going through a horrendous cancer journey, and I wanted to raise funds for the McGrath Foundation.
Yeah.
And the boob sled went global, that
It
thing.
definitely did.
But that day that photo was taken, we had an Inuit guy. So I'm training. Actually, we trained both in the same area, I think within months of each other, up with Maddie McNair. Up in Iqaluit.
You sent. I was going to bring it out, but you sent an email a few years ago, when you were leading up to that trip, and you're like, so tell me about Maddie McNair and that group there and whatnot. And so I'm so glad you did, because they're a fantastic crew.
Oh, she was amazing. Oh. But an Inuit came up and he tried to lick one of the nipples and his tongue got stuck on it.
Did you get that picture?
Yeah. Where's that photo? Where's that photo?
Yeah. We had to peel his head off.
Well, one person had a theory on Instagram, on my Instagram account, and the theory was that it was to keep you happy. Whenever you had a bad day, you'd just turn around and you'd have a big smile on your face.
Oh, it had a reverse effect. I remember hopping in the shower, Sarah, at the end of that expedition, and it was like, oh, jeepers. They're back.
We're back to Antarctica.
They're back. Or wow, they're a lot smaller in real life. No, I shouldn't say that. Okay.
They ended up saving my life. That I buried those boobs into a snow wall. I had the most horrendous storm. I reckon the worst storm in 50 years to hit the Antarctic coast. With winds well over 200 kilometres, and now wind chill at minus 47. And part of the reason I survived were those boobs. Like a boob is actually a reverse wind fairing. Like if you put the head sort of up into the wind was hitting the Kevlar and then scooping up the boob and up and over the tent. So they were a lifesaver. I don't think I'd drag them anywhere again, but somebody was saying we should do a polar journey together for prostate cancer.
Yeah,
okay. Just drag a set of nuts across Antarctica.
Those would be a lot softer.
Yeah, they'd be a lot smaller as well. They just shrink in the cold.
Just roll.
They're a lot less hardcore than boobs, let me tell you.
Yeah, way. Whoa, yeah, 100%. Like it's definitely not. We shouldn't.
Anyways, we've gone off track. So,
okay, so
do you want to ask him the
last question is part of this is like obviously bringing these lessons back down from the mountaintop and bring them out to everyday people, everyday life. Who else should sit in your hot seat? The hot seat that you're in right now. Who should we have on this show?
Who's an adventure thinker that you admire?
Yeah, I think what would be fascinating would be, I thought when you asked me this, heap of the guys who are cutting edge, but most of those guys are going to have similar thought processes to me. I think the young ones coming through are really interesting, and either Simon Goodburn's approach to adventure and life or Katali Wilson, my son. Obviously, I'm biased towards those two guys, but I think they're going to be really interesting to watch over their adventure career. But looking at how they've changed, because I see them as the sensitive new age guys of the adventure field. They don't say stupid things like I would say. They don't crack dad jokes. They're not inappropriate. They don't have to get carted out of the restaurant like I do.
I'll give them time.
Give them time. But they just have this wisdom that's come from understanding from an earlier age that, mum's got as much to input as dad. And they're just a beautiful meld. I'm really loving watching their approach to the wilderness. And they don't seem to have to bounce off stuff and break themselves as much as I did.
It's interesting because we just interviewed Angie Scarth Johnson, and she is 16, and oh my God, I mean, it's the wisdom on her shoulders. I want to raise, if adventure does create a human like that, I want to make sure that my children are exposed to it, because she's wise beyond her years and humble and kind, and it's just I agree.
Epic.
I think the young ones coming up are facing a very different world and are hopefully rising to the challenge in a way that we haven't seen before.
So Kid Simon. Okay.
Yeah.
Where's your son going? You didn't say what his expedition was. He starts tomorrow.
So he's doing basically a van journey down the east coast, and then he'll be down there with you guys in Sydney for a little bit, but then into the Blue Mountains, creating a short film series on surfing, climbing, and then they park in the vans in Sydney, picking up bicycles, cycling all the way to Jindabyne, stuffing the bikes in the bush, and then Nordic skiing across the Australian Alps and out. So it'll be their first kind of exposure trip and making sure that they planned everything to a T, so it'll be fun.
So it's like a hardcore triathlon, adventure triathlon.
It is, but how do we follow Kit? I'll put his Instagram up or something. Do you know what it...
Yeah, that'd be awesome. He will be Kit_Wilson.
Kit, yep.
Kit_Wilson. I should it's on the phone.
There we go. It's done. Bang, there it is.
Yeah. that's it. You got it.
So everybody follow Kit Wilson. Let's check it out. Like I'm keen. Like when he's coming to Sydney, as I mentioned before, hook us up. We'll have a chat.
We'll make him dinner.
Yeah, he can sleep in if he wants a room like and get out of the van. He can sleep in Morgan's bunk bed.
Oh, she just got bunk beds. He can have the bottom bunk.
He can have the bottom bunk.
That's phenomenal. He'll be uplinking to you for sure.
The next adventurers can chat. A 4-year-old and a 19-year-old.
Excellent. Plotting away.
Yeah, they've got no choice. They're in an adventurous household. It's going to come into their genes.
No, I hope so. No, I think so. I think they're going to be different kids. Jeff, now hang on the line, but because we'll come back to you once we've wrapped up the show. But mate, thank you so much for being on. Like I've learned a lot. I've learned a lot from you in this session, and I owe you. I don't know what I owe you, but I owe you something. It's amazing.
That's phenomenal. No, but thank you both for pushing the boundaries of Australian adventure. I think we underrate ourselves on a global scale, and I know in this household we feel like the Jamaican bobsled team when we step up against some of these guys, you know, who are training above the Arctic Circle, they're living above the Arctic Circle, but we've shown we can dominate, and the Aussie mongrel spirit always gets us across the line.
Well, I appreciate it. The little shot of resilience was appreciated too. So thank you for giving us a little head check on how to kind of face the world and embrace it, I guess. Embrace our bears, as you say.
Yeah, but also in that, be kind. Understand there are times when you will feel like you can't move, and that's time to figuratively be in the tent, have 8 hours sleep and double your calories and just chill. Like that, you will not. There's no benefit to you blowing your own engine up. So be kind to yourself.
Yeah. Well, I was just thinking about when you said that, Jeff. Between the two of us, I think, and Cass as well. Like I think Cass and I still hold the record for the longest unsupported unassisted polar journey, and you've got the longest unsupported solo polar journey of all time, which is epic.
Yeah, but what's amazing about your journey is it wasn't wind powered, so hats off to you, mate. That man hauling is a mug's game.
You're much smarter, Jeff.
No, you're smarter, but I don't think my knees could take what you did. Oh,
yeah,
crazy.
Brutal.
Brutal. We'll bow you out for a second, Jeff. We'll come back to you, but Lauren, thank you so much, Lauren.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, guys.
I hope to connect with you in person and definitely connect your son when he comes our way.
That'd be awesome.
Oh, geez, wrong camera. Oh, what's going on? Oh, I love this, Lauren. I'm going to sit next to you. Something's happened to our camera. So that was crazy. That was epic. That was awesome. I think
what a legend. Well, it's interesting how kind of no matter how different the adventures are, they all have similar themes. And
pushing us over so we can see both of us a little bit better.
Yeah.
Oh no, that's the wrong camera. It's over here. Oh.
Okay, there we are.
There we go.
Got it.
I think that came at the perfect time. Perfect shot of what we needed to hear. The world
to roll
needs to
with
hear.
the uncertainties that is COVID.
And to be present.
Yeah.
Like when you're at home, yes, because everyone is stuck at home right now and they're meant to be working, but have that delineation, that time, you know, as a family member versus as a worker for a company or whatever it is. So that's super powerful, super good to know, super good to hear. And we do have, coming up next week, we do have another adventure thinker on, and it's actually going to be Jess Watson.
One of my favorite women. She's amazing.
I'm so excited for this. I'm excited for all of them.
For those of you that don't know Jess, she was the youngest person to circumnavigate.
Sail around the world. Yeah.
Sail around the world.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
Let's
without stopping. So talk about somebody who can face challenges, isolation, sleep deprivation, and she was how old at the time?
16.
16.
I mean,
crazy.
I couldn't string a proper sentence together. I still can't.
And from there, she's gotten a master's degree and
is a consultant.
Is now a consultant in the corporate world.
She's a Hobart racer. She's amazing. And I've got some great stories about Jess that I really want to dive into and share with her.
So tune in for that one. That's going to be very good.
Wednesday, 15th of July at 12 p.m. And so also asking you guys, who else should we have on? Where this show is led by you and people are consuming this mainly afterwards, offline when it's not live, but you can jump on live and you can ask questions. We had some comments today. Michelle Lee, Ben Cove, thank you so much. Michelle Lee said she loves the analogy of the eagle and the budgie that Jeff talked about before.
Don't flip the wings.
And also, you know, about testosterone and ego. I think they were very powerful things that Jeff cracked into. Well, that's it for this week. We'll see you next week, Wednesday, 12 p.m. Till then, keep on exploring. See you later.